It's my feel-good breakfast show.
Welcome back. It is your Feel Good Breakfast Show, and we bring you awareness about all kinds of things on the show. And today we're putting the spotlight on heart and vascular health ahead of World Stroke Day, that is this coming Sunday. The biggest risk factor of having a stroke is having high and uncontrolled blood pressure. And here to unpack this topic for us and to just raise more awareness is CEO of the Heart and Stroke Foundation South Africa, Professor Pamela Naidu, who is back. And then joining us via video call in Johannesburg is stroke survivor Tennille Flint. We will be chatting to her as well. Prof, it's so great to have you here again. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for such an important topic. Very happy to be back.
Lovely. Even this early in the morning, which is always
Even this early
well,
in
right?
the morning, yeah.
So this is, I mean, you know, I think one thing that stands out to me is the fact that Tennille is so young as well, right? So I think there's a lot of stigmas attached to strokes, and a lot of people who are wondering, you know, what is actually a stroke? And because, you know, you get people having heart attacks and then people having strokes, and you feel like it's the same thing. But unpack it for us in layman's terms. What is a stroke, actually?
Yeah, no, great question. So literally a stroke is a brain attack. And so it can happen at any age, but as you get older, obviously you're more vulnerable, and there's certain reasons why younger people would get that, but we'll get to that later.
Yes, we will.
And essentially, I think for the public to be aware, there's a couple of types of strokes.
Okay.
But the common ones are basically around 3 to 4 of them.
Yeah.
The two most common ones are what we call the ischemic stroke, and there you have basically a blood clot that blocks the flow of blood literally through your circulatory system. And then if it gets lodged in the brain, what happens is obviously then you lose oxygen distribution throughout the body, but particularly in the brain. And then your cells start to die off because of it.
Sure.
So that's the one type. The second type is what we call a hemorrhagic stroke, and that's literally bleeding into the brain. And the effect is similar. You know, you'll have lack of oxygen flow and your cells will start to die off. And obviously this, you know, your central nervous system is dependent on your ability to talk, and walk and think and so on. And then you get what we call a TIA, which is a transient ischemic stroke. And that is, it happens so quickly, you kind of feel that you're having a stroke, and you probably do, but it's what they call a mini stroke.
Yeah.
And the symptoms can reverse. And then there's the fourth type, which is of unknown cause.
Okay.
You know, so there's basically how you can classify the various types of strokes.
Now, Professor, you just mentioned you feel like you're having a stroke. What are those symptoms someone that potentially is going through a stroke should be looking out for?
Yeah, that's a great question. The problem is that the person who's having a very serious stroke is not aware oftentimes.
Yeah.
You know, maybe a bit of uneasiness, but you actually don't know, because in that split second, you can start to lose function on one side of your body. So the awareness that we want to create is that those around you have to know what the symptoms of a stroke are.
Okay.
Yeah, even the little ones, you know, where the go-go's are looking after them and so on, and grandma and, you know, and the grandparents basically. And essentially the acronym FAST is very easy to remember. The T is not the symptom, but I'll get there. So, so if it's on, you know, either the left side or the right side, and so what happens is that half of your body becomes disproportionate to the other half.
Okay.
So starting with the face, you'll find there's drooping on the one side. If you ask the person to lift up their arm, they can't hold it up voluntarily.
Oh.
It will just like basically, then yeah, absolutely. So that's A for arm, you know, in the FAST. And speech. It may not always happen, but you're trying to tell me I feel something's happening, but I can't, it's unintelligible. I can't understand a single thing you say. So that's the speech gets very affected. And T is basically to get the person to an emergency care on time, timelessly. Because the quicker you get to emergency services, the better the outcome. So, you know, stroke can be reversed to a large degree if you're in a specialist unit.
Okay.
And then rehabilitation will help you even further. So it's pretty serious, you know.
Yes.
The disability from stroke is one of the most costly things, I should say.
Yeah.
Because it costs the family, the individual, and the country at large. Because if you're having younger people with stroke, they're in a productive age, and so you lose people in the workforce.
Well, let's get a first-hand experience from a stroke survivor. In fact,
Exactly.
Tennille, I'd love to bring you in here. So, Tennille, first and foremost, welcome to your Feel Good Breakfast Show. Thank you so much for sharing your story with us. But as you can hear from Professor, we're getting some insights, but you have first-hand experience. So, as a stroke survivor, kind of take us through your particular situation. And, of course, please tell us a bit more about what type of treatments have helped you regain your health.
Thank you very much. I'm honored to be here today. So I suffered a stroke at birth at 1 day old.
Oh, my word.
The doctors don't know what happened and why I had the stroke, but I did. And then I was discharged after a month, and my mom and my dad started therapy with me. We went to physios and OTs and all of that. And they did various therapy things with me. And I regained the mobility on my left side because I was a left hemiplegic. And I developed normally after that. And then unfortunately, when I turned 12, I developed epilepsy due to the lesion on my brain from my first stroke at birth. And the epilepsy became so bad that I was having up to 25 petit mal seizures a day. And we went to different neurologists and they put me on different medication, and some of it worked, some of it didn't. So I eventually went down to Cape Town and they placed electrodes on my head to see exactly where the epilepsy was coming from. And after that week, the doctors said they had insufficient information. So they had to operate, and they actually stitched the electrodes onto my brain.
Oh, my word.
And this was a 5.5-hour operation. After that, I stayed like that for a week, and then they found exactly where the epilepsy was coming from, and they were ready to operate. This was a 9.5-hour operation.
Sure.
And either during the operation or after the operation, I suffered a blood clot, and this caused 2 strokes. So I was a left hemiplegic at 16 years old.
Sure, Tennille.
And what happened afterwards was that I was still in hospital and they monitored me and everything. And once I was ready, I flew back to Joburg and I started rehab. I had to learn how to walk, how to get dressed, how to brush my teeth, things that we all take for granted, such as tying your hair or putting your earrings in. I had to relearn. And it was really difficult because, especially since I was so young, normally you would think that strokes happen to much older people. And I felt alone, and I felt very, very depressed in a way because I didn't know what was going to happen and how I was going to recover. But what helped me the most was the support of my family, who kept me going. And I started exercising right away. I went to gym. I started the horse riding for the disabled. I've done everything. I've done hydrotherapy in the water. I've gone to many physios and many OTs. And the trick is that you have to find the OT and the physio that suits you. And you will have physios and OTs that you don't click with. And then I just knew that I had to move on and go to the next one. So it's a journey. It really is. And throughout this whole journey, I've learned so many things. That's where I learned about Botox. And I didn't know that Botox could be used for stroke patients. And the Botox has actually helped me a lot in regards to reducing the tone on my left side.
Oh.
And the different types of exercises I had to do, the most influential person who really helped me was my personal trainer, Grant, who I met at the gym, actually, and he pushed me, he got me going. And when I first started with him, my arm was up to my side and I couldn't put it down. My foot was going inwards and I couldn't get it out. And I struggled to, for example, walk upstairs. And after a few months working with him, I was able to walk up and down stairs, and he eventually got me running.
Yeah. Tennille, that is unbelievable.
It takes a lot of hard work.
Yeah. And we are so grateful that you got to share your journey with us. And I know, like you said, it is a long one. And we are, so grateful that you were able to share that. Prof, I just wanted to ask you, she was young. It happened at birth for her. You said there's that one category where it can happen at any age. Who is more prevalent to receiving a stroke?
Stroke. At a younger age, yeah.
Just in general
just
as
in
well.
general,
Who should be super careful?
Yeah, what a story. So that's amazing. But I think it's a classic case of, there's two sort of classes of reasons, if you like, of what would drive someone having, to suffer a stroke. One is it's what we call unmodifiable factors. So it's your genetic inherited traits, you can't change your gene code. It's, again, family history, but it's also structural to some degree. You don't know what happened in utero, the baby's development. So that's kind of the one class of reasons. The other is actually what we call modifiable, which means that there's certain behaviors you can change to improve your chances of not getting a stroke. And that class is, the usual risk factors. Tobacco smoking is an absolute no-no. And it's one of the reasons I believe younger people are becoming, not at the age of, one day, but certainly teenagers and young adults. Yeah. Or they're probably taking illicit drugs. So there's a lot of those combination of factors. Excessive alcohol consumption, obesity, lack of exercise, poor diet, and hypertension.
Yeah.
Well, you mentioned hypertension at the beginning of the program or the session.
Yeah.
It's really one of the key drivers. And younger people are, becoming more prone to being hypertensive, particularly young children, because they are more obese than they were 20 years ago. Because parents are not cooking those healthy meals our moms and grandmoms made at the time,
Yeah, this has been an amazing info session. Thank you so much for sharing, Professor.
Absolutely.
It's been incredible. Tennille, to you for your story as well. It's been wonderful to raise awareness for what is us, being critically mindful around heart disease as well as stroke risk factors. And just remember, you are not alone in this. There are resources available to you. You can indeed be greater than stroke.